welcome to Capital View. The Narendra Modi-Nawaz Sharif joint statement made in the Russian city of Ufa has sparked controversy in both India and Pakistan. Is this a breakthrough moment in Indo-Pak relations, or is it back to a zero-sum game? The larger question being, can Modi's Pakistan policy really work? Joining me on that question, CR Kesavan of the Congress, Aman Sinha of the BJP, and Manoj Joshi, senior columnist and analyst. Thanks everyone very much indeed for being here. Mr. CR Kesavan, first across to you. You know, on the one hand, you say Mr. Modi is not reaching out to Pakistan. You say that Pakistan policy is in doldrums. You say Mr. Modi has been embarrassed by this particular joint statement, that Pakistan has embarrassed Mr. Modi. Mr. Modi has in turn embarrassed India by outreaching when Pakistan has done a U-turn. But it seems as if it's damned if you do and damned if you don't. You don't like it when Mr. Modi doesn't reach out to Pakistan. When he does reach out to Pakistan, you find fault.
No. There is no question that, dialogue is very essential and imperative. And I think everybody's ought to think in the interest of this country. This is not a political partisan issue. But I think you should go by the standards, this government has set for itself. The problem with this government, and I'll explain why, is that its Pakistan policy has been, incoherent, muddled and confused right from the beginning. Go back chronologically in August, when the Pakistan High Commissioner invited the Hurriyat for talks. The Foreign Secretary's talks were called off by the Prime Minister. And then what happened in September? The Prime Minister goes to the UN General Assembly and he says, I quote him, he says, it is up to Pakistan to create an appropriate atmosphere and there will be no talks with Pakistan in the shadow of terror. These were the words of the Prime Minister. Unfortunately, in November, when he was in Nepal and had that, handshake with Nawaz Sharif, on November 27, Sagarika ji, please note it was one day after the 6th anniversary of the brutal killing in Mumbai, where we lost 166 people. When the Prime Minister of India shook hands with Nawaz Sharif, Pakistan attacked and they attacked an army bunker in Arnia, and we lost 3 innocent civilians and 3 brave Jawans. So it was very clear there was no cordial atmosphere. Why did they send the foreign secretaries on a SARC expedition in March? Leave that alone. Take the example of June, as recent as June. June 1st, the Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj says, until Lakwi is arrested, we won't speak. What does Pakistan do on June 11th? They pass the damning resolutions against India. They say we are an hegemonistic nation, we are responsible for the suicide killings in Pakistan. And no, let me come back to the point. In the midst of all this, July 10th, they have this accord. Even 24 hours before, they killed a Jawan.
Aman Sinha of the BJP, was the BJP a little too hasty in calling this a historic moment? Because barely 72 hours later, you had the National Security Advisor of Pakistan making what Mr. Kesavan is saying, that U-turn.
I believe the Congress party, which has been consistently inconsistent on Indo-Pak foreign policy and diplomacy and has done large number of blunders on it, has no right at all to preach anybody on that. Now, as far as India's foreign policy with respect to Pakistan is concerned, the kind of visionary leadership that Prime Minister Modi has shown in past 1 year, India today is a global leader, emerging global leader, and the Congress era of India being perceived as a soft state is a old story now. Even our critics acknowledge the fact that India is an emerging global leader today. Now, as far as Indo-Pak joint statement is concerned,
the joint statement did not make a mention of Kashmir. The joint statement did not make a mention of Kashmir, but 72 hours later, Sartaj Aziz was saying that there can be no meaningful dialogue without Kashmir.
You are right,
so
Sagarika. Joint statement did not make any mention of Kashmir, although the joint statement clearly stated that both the countries will work towards eliminating terrorism and will combat terrorism in all its forms. And that was an acknowledgement coming across from Pakistan. Not only that, it had regular meetings between DGMOs, between DG BSF and Pakistan Rangers DG, and there is Pakistan committed that as far as 2611 is also concerned, they will do all that it takes to expedite
Terror
the 2611
is at the top of the joint statement.
Yes, that is point 5.
Terror is at the top of joint statement, which is why it's a success. Manoj Joshi, as Aman Sinha is saying, we're not going to be deterred by what Pakistan says to its domestic constituency. Now, perhaps Sartaj Aziz, when he said that about 2611, when he said about Kashmir, was addressing the domestic constituency within Pakistan. Is it therefore mature of the BJP and mature of Narendra Modi not to let the domestic constituency dialogue get in the way of the bilateral dialogue?
I think if you read the joint statement carefully, you will see that there is provision for what Sartaj Aziz said when he said that we will discuss all our outstanding issues. Now, I'm sure that in the discussions between Mr. Modi and Mr. Sharif, both sides would have come up with all what they consider their outstanding issues. Now, in a kind of a very pithy, short joint statement, you don't have to spell it out. You don't have to say that we'll discuss Kashmir, we'll discuss Sir Creek, so I think for whatever reason they decided that they would keep it short and brief, meaning the joint statement. But there's enough room in that joint statement and in the wording of the joint statement to take into account what Mr. Aziz has been saying, and I think it would be a bit short-sighted on India's part if you think that you can have a discussion with Pakistan on outstanding issues and Kashmir is somehow not part of that. I think that would be rather strange. So I don't see what this is a storm in a teacup. Yes, of course, foreign policy, when foreign policy is made, there are times when such issues are there where you have to address your domestic constituencies. So if Sartaj Aziz is addressing his constituency.
Is that the key? Is that the key, that in the Indo-Pak dialogue, domestic constituencies are going to play a role?
Of course.
Leaders are going to talk to domestic constituencies, and perhaps those who are making peace need to factor that in.
Absolutely. Meaning there is absolutely no doubt about that. Meaning, you know, the India-Pakistan, between India and Pakistan, all issues have a very high emotional content. This is not true of, let us say, many of our issues with China. I mean, the average Indian doesn't really care about what's happening in the Indian Ocean and Malacca Straits and that kind of stuff. But the average Indian gets worked up if there is firing on the line of control and the terrorists are caught somewhere, or infiltrating terrorists is killed. This makes news all over the country. So this is an issue, this is an emotional issue, and so is Kashmir for a variety of reasons, an emotional issue in Pakistan.
Mr. Kesavan, isn't the Congress just looking to score political points? Because at the end of the day, foreign policy does need a consensus. As Manoj Joshi is pointing out, there are emotional constituencies on both sides.
Sagarika ji, the unfortunate part is, you please see, Sartaj Aziz is not a politician who's fighting an election there to appeal to domestic constituencies. He is a national security advisor. Did you hear one word from Mr. Ajit Doval on our side? No. Please parse what Mr. Sartaj Aziz said in his interview. He said this agreement is informal, it is non-binding. They have not even considered it as a formal meeting. What kind of a self-goal by the Indian government is this? It's embarrassing. You know, why has the Indian establishment not reacted? Where is the foreign ministry statement on Mr. Sartaj Aziz?
Complete contradiction between what Mr. Sartaj Aziz said in that interview and the joint statement, and the fact that there has been no response from the Indian side on Mr. Sartaj Aziz's statement, when he clearly said without Kashmir no dialogue, and India has simply not given enough evidence on the 2611 trial. Clearly, Pakistan is not going to move on the 2611 trial as the situation stands. So is it not therefore a compromise that the Indian leadership has made?
No, absolutely not. You know, as I mentioned to you, Sagarika, we have to go by the joint statement signed by the Prime Ministers of both the countries, and it clearly addresses the issues that India is concerned about. Now, we understand that certain individuals in Pakistani dispensation are going to be frustrated, are going to, you know, utter something or other which is out of sync or out of turn. Whoever it may be.
But this is Sartaj Aziz, the advisor to Nawaz Sharif.
We take note of everything, but there is no need to respond to everything. We will respond as we deem fit, and, you know, everything need not be, you know, visible. All responses, you know, need not be visible at all point in time. So therefore, the Indian diplomatic establishment takes note of everything.
I just want to put Mr. Kesavan's point to you.
Responds to everything. Whatever is in the larger national interest of the country, as on date, as on time today, the present establishment will give due credence to it and will secure all our interests.
But I just want to put Mr. Kesavan's point to you, that isn't there a lack of consistency in your approach?
No, absolutely not. Let us not talk about the Congress party on consistency issue, because they have been consistently inconsistent. I don't even want to point out what happened in Sharm el-Sheikh, what all, you know, Manmohan Singh uttered in between. I don't want to get into that. However, let me point out that the foreign policy is not about consistency, but about the larger national interests.
Let me just get Mr. Kesavan to respond to that. Aman Sinha is saying that The Congress party is also consistently inconsistent. After all, when the Sharm el-Sheikh declaration happened, when Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister, your party turned against Manmohan Singh for peace talks with Pakistan. Your party did not support Mr. Manmohan Singh.
Please understand that first I'd like to take strong exception to the statement that foreign policy is not about consistency. Foreign policy is about consistency.
I'm sorry, you
and
did
also
not understand,
continuity.
Mr. Kesavan.
And it's very, very,
No, this is the
it's very,
difficulty.
very
You
not
don't
only
understand
naive,
the foreign
but I
policy
think
and
it's
you
even
start misquoting
bordering
others.
being puerile.
I have said
to say that
foreign
Sartaj
policy
Ji's
is
statement
about
doesn't
larger
matter. I am
national
reiterating
interest.
this again, Sagarika ji. I am looking at the first point of this agreement. It says a meeting in New Delhi between two national security advisors to discuss all issues connected to terrorism. And here you have Sartaj Aziz completely debunking this whole agreement, and you don't have the Indian establishment responding to him. Rather than the BJP spokesperson coming and giving their facile arguments, raising their voice, why doesn't the foreign ministry or the MEA respond?
You're saying that the BJP has to respond, the Ministry of External Affairs has to respond.
Not the BJP spokesperson.
The MEA has to respond
BJP
to
is
what
responding.
Sartaj Aziz is saying. Just one quick comment from you, Aman Sinha,
Yes.
and I'm going to Manoj Joshi.
No, BJP is responding. I'm here speaking as a party spokesperson. Now,
no, why isn't the MEA
government-
responding? Why isn't the MEA
no,
responding?
what do you mean by, no, I'm sorry to
Sartaj
say,
Aziz is not a
MEA does
political
not take,
personality.
MEA does not respond to each and everything which is uttered in Pakistan. There are
Okay,
several
MEA is not
people
going to,
who may
respond to
have
this.
different points
Let
of
me just
view,
bring in-
but as far as India is concerned, we are absolutely clear that we go by the joint
man was present
statement
in the
which was
meeting.
issued after a consensus between Prime Ministers of India and Pakistan.
Aman Sinha, this is not any and every person. This is none other than Sartaj
I agree.
Aziz, who
I
is the
agree.
And
advisor
therefore I am saying,
to
therefore I am
Nawaz
saying,
going to
Sharif.
meet
Sagarika,
He is the
that
NSA.
in Pakistan, several people in ruling dispensation are frustrated. They want to address their domestic constituency, and for their narrow political gains, they make these statements. There is no need for
Okay,
MEA
let
to
me just
comment
bring
on
in
that.
Manoj Joshi in here. Let me just bring in Manoj Joshi in here. Manoj Joshi, has something changed between 2014 when Mr. Nawaz Sharif met Narendra Modi for the first time at his swearing in and now?
Certainly, if you recollect in 2014, you had that siege of Islamabad, you had the PTI and other forces, Tahirul Qadri, besieging Islamabad and creating, virtually making it impossible for anything to take place in Pakistan. So certainly Nawaz Sharif's position has strengthened. See, I'd like to make one point. I think the fact of the matter is what Mr. Modi is doing is nothing new. It's a continuity of policy. His policy is broadly similar to the policy followed by the UPA, followed by Atal Bihari Vajpayee, by Mr. Inder Gujral, Deve Gowda, Narasimha Rao. All of them have followed the similar policy of engaging with Pakistan, notwithstanding the fact that Pakistan supports terrorism in India. So we are trying to work that this is a long, this is a marathon. This is a long distance race. It's not something which sprint. You're not going to have one breakthrough. You're going to have many little breakthroughs. And I think in those terms, I would say this was a little breakthrough, considering the fact that Mr. Modi's background, his party, they came to power with a kind of a view that they would take a tough stand against Pakistan. So despite that, I think Mr. Modi has been smart enough to realize that your options with Pakistan are limited, and
Right.
and you have no other choice but to simultaneously engage Pakistan even while defending India.
What does it mean for Mr. Modi particularly? Does he have to rise above his party to push the dialogue with Pakistan? Does he have to rise above the Sangh Parivar's concerns to push the dialogue with Pakistan? We're going to come back and talk about that after this tiny break. Welcome back to Capital View. We're talking about whether the joint statement between Nawaz Sharif and Narendra Modi at the Russian city of Ufa was a breakthrough moment, a zero-sum game, and can Mr. Modi's Pakistan policy work? Mr. CR Kesavan of the Congress, your own party backbencher MP, Mr. Manishankar Iyer, has said that dialogue with Pakistan must be uninterrupted and uninterruptible. As Manoj Joshi was saying in the previous segment, it's not about one single breakthrough, it's about a series of breakthroughs. So why should you now try and stop the process of dialogue? Surely the process of dialogue is something that you should encourage, your party should encourage.
The question is, as I told you in the beginning of this program, dialogue is imperative. Nobody questions that in national interest. The question is, but how has the ground reality changed, and
Why
what kind of
not give
assurance?
dialogue a chance? Why not give dialogue
I'm
process
going by
with
the
Pakistan a
yardsticks of this
chance?
government, Sagarika ji. You please tell me, between last year and now, what kind of ground reality has changed? What kind of assurances have been given? What kind of deliverables are we seeing? No, the issue is this: if suppose this meeting had happened and you had treated it with restraint and gone ahead, it's a different issue. But even before this meeting happened, as I told you, as in June till last month, you had them passing resolutions against India in the parliament. You had them killing. Even in the last 2-3 days, there have been, we've lost Jawans' lives.
Let me put that to Mr. Aman Sinha. Aman Sinha, now think about it. God forbid, supposing God forbid, there is another terror attack. What then is your party and the larger Sangh Parivar going to do? Is there going to be too much pressure on Mr. Modi to stop the dialogue process?
Even factually speaking, there has not been any, terror attack, even of minor intensity really. And they have been contained to a large extent. That shows something about the strong policy of this government.
No, God forbid, hypothetically, were it to happen.
We are not going to.
Were it to happen,
I do not think that is a question.
Would the BJP allow the Prime Minister to talk to Pakistan?
Responded, but let me point out that the joint statement clearly says that on all issues of terror, first of all, both the countries condemn terror in all forms. Thereafter, on all issues of terror, both the NSAs will be in close touch. And even on 26/11 trial, there are specific assurances, what Manoj Ji was pointing out. Let me tell him that on point 5 of the joint statement, there is a specific assurance that they'll give the voice samples, etc. So everything has been taken care of, and the concerns of India have been addressed.
There is Mr. Modi's past rhetoric as well. The fact is, when he was Gujarat Chief Minister and Mr. Salman Khurshid had a dinner for Pakistan President Asif Ali Zardari, Mr. Modi then went public saying that why is the government eating biryani with someone who has killed our soldiers?
Both the countries have to attempt to bridge this trust deficit, and our policy has been stated very clearly and spelled out very clearly by MEA time and again. And both the Prime Ministers in their joint statement have very clearly spelled out all the issues, and whatever issues and concerns that we are having, they have all been addressed in the joint statement, and we are going to go by the joint statement. Therefore, there is no need of getting into,
you're going to go by the joint statement. You're repeatedly saying that. I just want to come to Manoj Joshi.
We are not going to get into.
I want to extend your argument.
We are not
I want to extend your argument to
tangent and get into
Manoj
other
Joshi.
irrelevant issues.
Right, Manoj Joshi. Is there a recognition that Modi in power, Mr. Narendra Modi as Prime Minister, is now a much more pragmatic thinker? He's pragmatically thinking that in order to reach out to Pakistan, you have to try and rise above perhaps the extremist voices on both sides of the border. So is there a much more pragmatic, more statesman-like approach perhaps that he is adopting at this stage?
Yeah, I think there are two things here. One is that we must not, it would be unfair to compare Modi, the party leader, versus Modi, the Prime Minister of India. As Prime Minister of India, he's got to follow policies which further Indian interests. As a kind of a party leader, he looks at furthering his party's interests, number one. Number two, you're right that, you see, Modi doesn't have the background of previous prime ministers. For example, Dr. Manmohan Singh was a PhD, well-known economist, etc. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, almost for 30 years, he was leading the BJP's foreign policy
let me point
wing
out,
in the Lok Sabha.
Prime Minister
Now,
Modi
whereas,
No, Aman, hang on a minute. Let Manoj finish and then I'll get you to respond.
He was leading Mr. Vajpayee was leading the foreign policy wing of the party in the Lok Sabha. Likewise, but Mr. Modi is a much more instinctual politician. He has come to power, he had certain rhetoric. Now he is moving out, and so far I think his stepping has been faultless. And I would say that with regard to China, with regard to the United States, with regard to the Indian Ocean, and you look at all his visits, etc., I think that he's been pretty good at it.
But Aman Sinha, I want to raise Manoj's point that Modi, the party leader, is different from Modi, the Prime Minister. But how much support does Mr. Modi have within your party for a strategic engagement with Pakistan? That's the question.
No, Prime Minister Modi has the entire support of all party and all its affiliated organization. Each and every member of the party is behind Prime Minister, and especially on foreign policy issues, Sagarika. irrespective of party lines also. All the citizens support the Prime Minister of the country in these diplomatic initiatives, and the government is privy to, you know, several inputs, and on basis of, you know, factoring in several inputs, they formulate their foreign policy, and the whole country, it is a obligation upon whole country to support them, and indeed the whole party and the whole country is behind Prime Minister Modi strongly, because Prime Minister Modi in past 1 year of his governance through his visionary leadership has immensely strengthened the position of India and Indians throughout the world, and this is even conceded and acknowledged by our critics. And therefore, in fact, let me
but you said that your party is firmly behind
that Prime Minister Modi
Let me just get in Mr. Kesavan in here.
Among all other Prime Ministers in the past also.
Okay, let me just get in Mr. Kesavan here. Mr. Kesavan, again, you know, as Manoj is also pointing out, and as Aman is also stating, that, you know, Modi is following the continuity of foreign policy, right from Mr. Narasimha Rao. So why should you oppose such a continuity?
Sagarika ji, it's not opposing for the sake of opposing. Even Shiv Sena, the trusted ally who share a government, you know, in the confusion-riddled Maharashtra now, have opposed BJP's foreign policy. So let's not say that it's unanimous and everybody is on board. And one more point I want to make on record is that there have been more than 800 ceasefire violations, which has been accepted as the highest number in the last year of the BJP government has taken over. You know, all we are trying to say is this: everybody wants national interest, but we are saying you should choose the right atmosphere and a conducive milieu where India can, you know, put forth its arguments and, you know, have a dialogue when we have the situation, you know, with full strength.
I just want to put to Manoj the point. Manoj Joshi, do you feel that Pakistan at the end of the day is going to be able to move on things like the prosecution of Zaki Rahman Lakhvi, is going to be able to move on the terror concerns that India has, or is the domestic agenda really going to dictate Pakistan's moves?
We have been watching, we've been having this dialogue with Pakistan since the early 90s. And terrorism has been part of that dialogue. We have moved sometimes 2 steps forward, 1 step back has been the kind of situation. My point is, today the objective situation within Pakistan is such that they are being compelled to fight the very terrorists that they had themselves created. So they are the people who have now been are being hit by the same terrorists. And Pakistan has paid a pretty,
and there's a realization, there's a growing realization.
There's definitely a growing realization. So I'm not banking on Pakistan's the goodness of the Pakistani hearts. I am banking on their self-interest. I think there is a self-interest in Pakistan that they've realized that this thing has gone too far, and I think it's in their self-interest. Now, whether Lakhvi is part of it or you know, Hafiz Saeed is part of it, I can't say. Perhaps not. In the sense, you know, but I don't care about the individual terrorists out here. What we're looking for is a larger transformation of Pakistan. If that transformation comes, it's in India's interests.
That's a very important point, that by engaging with Pakistan, India can strengthen the hand of those in Pakistan who are moderate, who are liberal, who want a successful Pakistan. By not engaging with Pakistan, we create a failed Pakistan. But let me just get in Aman Sinha. Aman Sinha, I just want a quick comment in from you. If, God forbid, as I said, if there is a terror attack, if there are some problems that arise again, are you committed as a party and a government to continuing the dialogue process?
Entire party and all citizens of the country are behind Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the present government in place, and all the diplomatic initiatives of the present government are going to be supported by the party and by the citizens and whole country.
Right. Mr. Kesavan, I just want to ask you as a concluding question, the fact that the joint statement puts terror right at the top, terror has primacy, the war against terror has primacy in that joint statement, is that not a positive sign for you?
The joint statement has been made infructuous because Sartaj Aziz is the czar of the foreign policy establishment of Pakistan. He said it's informal, non-binding.
Mr. Kesavan seems to be
believing
Sartaj Aziz more than anybody.
Should you not strengthen the Prime Minister's hand?
My question is, we are with the Indian government. If the Indian foreign policy establishment comes out and says we were also present in the meeting with Sartaj Aziz, and this is not true, why
this is the difficulty with Congress
India's
party.
hands will be strengthened if India's external affairs minister makes a statement saying that what Sartaj Aziz says is not true, because as much as he was in the meeting, we were in the meeting, and we stick by the agreement. As when the silence of the Indian establishment and the Indian Foreign Ministry only establishes that what Sartaj Aziz is saying is true.
We're going to have to leave it there on Capital View. We've been talking about whether or not this joint statement between Nawaz Sharif and Narendra Modi is going to create a new way forward for the strategic engagement between India and Pakistan. As we've established, there are domestic constituencies on both sides. Highly emotionally charged nations are trying to make peace. And for that, both leaders on both sides must show maturity and mutual understanding. Thank you very much indeed to all my panelists for joining me. Thanks for watching Capital View. Catch us again next week.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.